Good day, everybody. How's it going out there? Well, we are coming up on another year in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where probably almost it'll be impressive if it gets up to 12,000 furries, but probably somewhere around the high 11,000s, 11,750 ish to 12,000. Plenty of furries will be showing up to Pittsburgh this year if the numbers this year in that booming furry sort of roaring 20s, as it were, continues to occur this year. You can see my YouTube short for that information. But as it's been going through, more conventions have been happening and they've been getting larger, and that's a great and wonderful thing. And I'm sure that a lot of furries will have an excellent time at the convention this year, and I hope you all have a wonderful time and a great time. I did want to bring up one thing that might have been forgotten a little bit from last year and even from 2019, because the year, like the difference between 2019 and 2022 when Anthrocon came back, there was a thing that was sort of forgotten until I saw the issue on social media. In 2019, I was actually on the ground, and when closing ceremonies had finished, they basically had the entire convention center locked down. They had ushered the furries from the convention center basically back into the street of Pittsburgh. Basically, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay in the David Lawrence Convention Center. Now, it's not unusual for, I guess it was growing as a not unusual thing for more and more law enforcement to usher people out. In a hockey attendance I did in 2020, same thing kind of happened after the hockey game was over. A lot of the fans were ushered out and led out of the space, and there was a lot of law enforcement presence, as it were. So that happened in Anthrocon 2022 as well. But the issue is that a lot of furries found themselves dealing with what they would see as street or hostilities, right? And so a lot of stories would come out on social media about those interactions that were deemed as negative from the law enforcement handling of the disbursement of the group in the David Lawrence Convention Center. Certain things, and I go full on. I make a really long article in the description below if you have time to read it. But in essence, like a lot of things, a lot of stories came out of this situation. Some of the more notable things being like access to elevators were cut off, and for furries and for attendees who basically had disabilities or things like that, it made it very difficult for them to exit the building. There were like multiple stories about law enforcement putting their hand on their firearm on their belt, when talking to people or dealing with the situation on the ground. There was certain terminology that other furries would overhear, such as the furries have been evacuated, which might have caused a stir and caused people to think that something bigger was going on when it was just basically they were just trying to clear out the convention center. There was general confusion as to that the convention center was closed to begin with. Because the convention center is, it's sort of seen as like, well, this is a sort of a community place, and like, why would they shut it down so quickly and rapidly after, these kind of things? But it is a private facility, so like they might have well, you guys rented it to this point, and we're no longer going to offer it after that point. But that goes on to the whole like communication thing, which I'll get into later. And also that there are people obviously in the spaces thinking that they might have had it until like later on in the evening, and basically all of a sudden they were having people go, get out of here, like, and basically told to vacate and pack up all their stuff really quickly. So knowing that has occurred in 2019 and 2022, what we can say for almost basically certain in 2023 is that if you find yourself in the space of the David Lawrence Convention Center going into Sunday evening, know that after 6 o'clock, they're going to they are going to probably usher attendees out of the building, because that's what they've done in 2019. That's what they've done in 2020. And unless something really changes, unless some sort of thing changes in the background, you can say, well, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times. So you can do with that information as you will. If you're fine with dealing with authorities and stuff like that, just be prepared to leave after closing ceremonies. If you don't like dealing with large groups of law enforcement or things like that, be sure to try to vacate the David Lawrence Convention Center by 5:30 at the latest. So that way you don't have to deal with that. Now, for those of you not aware, or haven't been to Anthrocon before, the David Lawrence Convention Center is a large convention center that's found, usually the way most furries access it is through the West End, and there's like a sky bridge into that. So that's the building to the south here. And then you kind of go to the north into the David Lawrence Convention Center. There are other entryways like on the street level in the middle there. And basically there's like a skywalk, there's a main band room. And when they close down that facility, basically you're still going to be able to access the West End and do things in the West End. You're going to be able to do those things. Just be sure to keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. And I hope that Anthrocon social media does a better job at conveying particular areas being closed, right? They usually do that with the dealer's den, right? They say the dealer's den will be closed in an hour. If you want to buy some stuff, hurry up and get it done. So if an entire facility that was open to furries before is closed, I would hope that more furry conventions will start to understand that communication with their attendees is important, so you lay down less confusion and less frustration that occurred in the previous years when security was obviously told, hey, get the furries out of here at the end of the thing, and the furries were left clueless. And so that sort of miscommunication leads to that sort of social media grievance and frustration, right? Furries are I think furries, for the most part, don't like to cause trouble and a fuss, but sometimes they feel that they're kind of forced to because of behaviors or lack thereof of leaderships. So I think that for the most part, things should go hopefully more smoothly this year. Being informed is half the battle. So if you've watched this video, obviously you're informed, and share it with people who go to Anthrocon. Just let them know that over the last 2 conventions, the David Lawrence has been basically shut down after closing ceremonies, so be ready for that in this case as well. So that's the whole thing. And by the way, Anthrocon is not the only convention that's had these sort of strange closings of areas that you don't because I know when I went to Furthermore for its premiere year in the Huntsville Inn, there was a section of the hotel that's just sort of public walking space and just sort of hang out. I felt it was kind of a chill and hangout place, and it was a kind of a place that was sort of the main hall sort of outside of the front double doors, and that area got closed off at one point one night and there was a person standing there and going, no, you can't be here, go. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know. So it's one of those things where it is what it is, but I think if furry conventions know that if there's an area that is technically quote unquote open to the convention and places like that having some sort of communication as to these areas are going to be shutting down in this time of night, so try to avoid those things. And word of mouth is fine and good, but sometimes it's people not knowing that they shouldn't be in XYZ location, being told by an authority figure, and the authority figure being the first to tell them that can kind of annoy some people. It's why didn't anyone tell me, right? Or it's and then they kind of feel, and I think that was sort of what the big contention was at Anthrocon in 2022, and at least what the most people I think felt frustrated about was that, this sort of vocal sort of politicking from Anthrocon over the 2010s was like, Pittsburgh welcomes us with open arms and it's a wonderful city, and then all of a sudden, like, so, but then when, the convention's over, all of a sudden it's like, get out of here, you freaking furries, right? That's sort of probably how it felt to people. And I think that's the frustration that a lot of people felt at the end of 2022. And this is the, how they presented that information on social media highlights that feeling. Like, I thought this was supposed to be our home away from home, or home when we don't even have one to begin with in the case of some furries. And then all of a sudden, it feels like you're being kicked out in a very harsh manner, like in a very abrupt manner, right? That might unfortunately remind some furries of their non-home away, situation, right? But anyways, I hope it does better this year. Hope it's not third. I hope the third time is really the charm here. I hope that the communication and the people who are clearing the spaces are a lot more courteous and polite and professional this year. But anyways, don't worry about it so much. Enjoy your time at the convention. Have a great time, and just keep it in the back of your mind. If you don't want to deal with that sort of stuff, if you have a disability, try to get out of the convention center before 6 o'clock, so that way they don't shut the elevators down on you or anything. Because having that information and you dealing with the situation how you want to deal with it is the most important, and your safety is important. So do what you can, do what you will, and do what you can. Anyways, thank you guys very much for watching tonight, and hope you guys have a great time at the convention. I will not be there this year. I will be at another one later on in the summer, but I'll see you then, and I'll see you later. So have a good one, guys.